The walls that couldn't hold a legend. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button if you love stories that peel back the truth hiding behind concrete walls and locked doors. Because what you're about to hear stays with you long after the screen goes dark. The screen fades in on a stormy dawn over Sao Paulo. Gray sky, distant sirens, and the towering structure of a prison that once stood as the embodiment of fear itself. Carandiru, the fortress so chaotic, so impossible to control, that the government ultimately shut it down. But our story doesn't begin with its fall. It begins with one man walking into its gates, a man whose name echoed through the streets long before he ever saw the inside of a cell. Diego O Fantasma Ramos. A street boss, a strategist, and a whispered ghost in the underworld. Not known for brutality, but for something far more dangerous: influence. For nearly a decade, detectives across Sao Paulo worked to shut down a network of robberies tied to a sophisticated crew that operated with military precision. Vehicles vanished, cash routes got intercepted, and safe houses were always vacated minutes before raids. The only constant was the rumor. O Fantasma planned it, but no one could prove he even existed until one night. A city on edge. On August 14th, a quiet neighborhood erupted into chaos when an armored truck was found abandoned. Engines still running, doors open, guards missing. There was no confrontation, no explosion, no sign of panic. It was as if the truck had been lifted out of reality and placed gently on a side street. The only clue was a single phone left on the driver's seat, playing an audio loop of distorted radio chatter. No fingerprints, no tracks, no nearby cameras. But then investigators found something else. The truck's GPS trail followed a perfect pattern. Exact turns, no hesitation. The type of route only someone with intimate knowledge of police response times would choose. Someone methodical, calculated. Someone like the ghost they'd been chasing. By dawn, investigative units were pulling files, reviewing every unsolved case tied to professional heists. Officers whispered the same name. It's him. This has his handwriting. But they still didn't know how close they were to finally catching him. The trap. At 2:46 p.m., a break came from an unexpected place, a mechanic from the outskirts of the city. He reported a suspicious van hidden in a warehouse, matching the description of a vehicle used in earlier robberies. Officers moved fast. No full team. No tactical unit. Just a small squad trying to beat the clock. When they entered the warehouse, they found the van. Lights off, doors open, crates stacked around it. But something wasn't right. The air felt too still, too prepared. Like they were stepping into someone else's plan. Because they were. In the center of the warehouse, sitting on a chair as if expecting them, was Diego Ramos, calm, unarmed, hands resting loosely on his knees. He didn't run. He didn't negotiate. He simply looked up and said, "You finally stopped chasing shadows." Within minutes, he was in handcuffs. The news spread across Brazil. The ghost had been caught. Social media exploded. Commentators debated whether he was a mastermind or just a myth made real. But detectives didn't celebrate. They had a strange feeling about the arrest, that it came too easily. And they were right. Because Diego's capture wasn't the end of his story. It was the beginning of a legend. Carandiru. The gates close. When Diego arrived at Carandiru, the officers escorting him were tense. The prison was known for overcrowding, fractured alliances, and a constant undercurrent of danger. Even guards walked its corridors like they were navigating a minefield. Some inmates recognized him immediately. Others watched him with suspicion. In a place ruled by unwritten codes, reputations could turn into either protection or a target. But what surprised everyone was Diego's demeanor. He wasn't intimidated. He wasn't defiant. He was observing, quietly mapping the environment like he had studied it his entire life. He spent his first nights listening to arguments, to deals whispered through cell bars, to the constant grind of a facility barely held together. And soon, something unusual happened. Inmates started coming to him, not out of fear, but out of curiosity. They asked questions. They sought advice. They tested whether the myth matched the man. Diego never bragged. He never denied anything, either. He simply spoke in calm, precise language, like someone who had mastered reading people long before he ever stepped foot behind bars. Word began to spread through the wings. The ghost isn't just a criminal. He's a strategist. But while Diego was adapting to prison life, something else was happening outside. Something investigators didn't expect. The twist that changes everything. 2 weeks after his arrest, police reviewing Diego's evidence box found a sealed envelope tucked beneath the inventory sheet. It shouldn't have been there. No one remembered logging it. It wasn't on the chain of custody list. When the detectives opened it, they froze. Inside was a meticulously drawn map, not of escape routes, not of crimes, but of Carandiru prison itself. Every corridor, every guard post, every blind spot. And, at the bottom, in Diego's handwriting, one chilling line. Now the real work begins. The ghost within the walls. Carandiru had a rhythm, a violent heartbeat that never softened, never slowed. Most men fought against it, trying to carve out a sliver of safety. But Diego O Fantasma Ramos did the opposite. He listened to it. He studied it. And soon he moved with it. The discovery of the prison map outside the walls sent shockwaves through the investigation unit. Detectives re-examined the arrest, doubting their own success. Had Diego wanted to be caught? Had he orchestrated his arrest as a move inside a much larger plan? Inside Carandiru, the inmates didn't know about the map, but they sensed something else. Something different. Diego wasn't acting like a newcomer. He wasn't lost, nervous, or overwhelmed. He navigated the overcrowded wings with the calm confidence of someone who understood the mechanics of survival, as if he'd been preparing for this environment for years. And because Carandiru was unpredictable, full of shifting alliances and invisible hierarchies, that confidence drew attention. Some good, some dangerous. The man who ran the wing. On the 3rd week of Diego's time inside, a man named Rodrigo Castanho, known as Roca, approached him. Roca wasn't the biggest or strongest inmate, but he had something far more powerful: social gravity. When he walked, conversations paused. When he spoke, the room leaned in. He had run B-Wing for almost 6 years, surviving by maintaining a delicate balance between diplomacy and intimidation. No major conflict inside happened without him knowing. Roca pulled up a plastic chair, spun it around, and sat facing Diego. "You're the ghost," he said. "The one the police brag about catching." Diego didn't respond immediately. He simply looked at Roca, reading him the same way he read blueprints, entry points, and target patterns. "And you're the man who keeps the peace here," Diego finally said. "Or at least pretends to." Roca smirked, not offended, but entertained. "You talk bold for someone who hasn't earned a place yet," he said. "Why would I want a place?" Diego asked. That answer made Roca pause. Inside Carandiru, everyone wanted something: protection, status, food, influence. The men who claimed they wanted nothing were either lying or far more dangerous than they appeared. A long silence stretched between them before Roca leaned in. "Some men here think you plan to get caught," Roca whispered. "They think you came in with a purpose." "And what do you think?" Diego asked. Roca smiled. "I think men like you don't breathe without a plan. So tell me, ghost, why are you here?" Diego didn't respond, and that silence was more revealing than any spoken answer. Roca stood up slowly. "Just know this," he said. "Whatever game you think you're playing, this place plays back." The investigation tightens. Outside the prison walls, Detectives Alves and Morera were losing sleep. They knew Diego's reputation. They knew his capability. And the map found in the evidence box had changed the entire tone of the case. "He's not planning an escape," Alves said, staring at the map pinned across a board. "This isn't an exit diagram. It's an operational layout." "For what?" Morera asked. Alves shook his head. "I don't know. But he didn't draw this from memory. He had access to internal schematics." "So someone inside Carandiru helped him?" "Or," Alves said, lowering his voice, "someone outside gave him plans not meant to exist." In the corner of the map, underlined twice, was a location labeled simply Block D, sublevel storage. It meant nothing to the detectives at first, until Morera looked up the facility blueprints. "There is no sublevel for Block D," he said. Alves froze. Then why did he mark it? The tension builds inside. Meanwhile, inside the prison, Diego's influence was quietly growing. It began with simple advice. A man needing help mediating a dispute over shared bunk space. Another asking whether Diego could decode a strange pattern of guard rotations that seemed off. Diego offered solutions calmly, never demanding anything in return. And in a place where favors were currency, a man who offered them freely was either a saint or a strategist. Rumors spread. He sees things nobody else sees. He predicts guard searches before they happen. He knows which wing gets locked early. All of it was based on observation, the same skill that made him a ghost on the outside. But Carandiru's balance was delicate. Too much influence shifted the ground. And someone noticed, someone who had as much to lose as Roca. His name was Fabiano Cruz, called Bino, a man with a short fuse and a long record. He ran contraband into E-Wing and hated anything, or anyone, he couldn't control. So when Roca didn't warn him about Diego, he took it personally. 2 days later, during recreational hour, Bino approached Diego with a slow clap, flanked by 2 men. "I hear the ghost gives advice," Bino said loudly. "Maybe he can advise me on something. Like why he's pretending he belongs here." Diego looked at him with a calm stillness that made Bino even angrier. "I don't pretend," Diego said. "Everyone here belongs somewhere. Even you." That subtle, surgical insult made the nearby inmates fall silent. Bino moved closer, jaw tightening. "Careful, ghost. You may have fooled the cops, but you don't fool me." Diego didn't move. "I'm not here to fool anyone," he said. "I'm here to learn." Bino leaned forward. "Learn what?" Diego finally smiled, just barely. "How this place reacts." It was an answer Bino didn't understand. But Roca, standing in the distance, did. And what frightened him wasn't the words. It was the calm behind them. The discovery that changes everything. Inside the warden's office that same afternoon, Detectives Morera and Alves arrived with a map and a request. They needed to see every restricted area in Carandiru. But when they brought up Block D sublevel storage, the warden frowned. "There is no sublevel," he insisted. "Not on any official plan." Alves slid the map forward. "Then explain why he has it." The warden hesitated. Something flickered in his expression, recognition or fear. Morera pressed him. "Is there something you're not telling us?" The warden finally exhaled. "There was a sublevel once. Built decades ago. Never used. Sealed after construction." "Why seal it?" Alves asked. The warden didn't answer right away. Instead, he said, "Because whatever's down there was never meant to be found. The room that should never have been opened." It started with a rumor. A whisper passed from bunk to bunk, wing to wing, until every man in Carandiru felt it in the pit of his stomach. The sublevel was real. And Diego, O Fantasma, Ramos knew exactly where it was. Inside the prison walls. Tension tightened like a wire pulled to snapping point. Outside, Detectives Alves and Morera gathered every document, every forgotten report, and every retired guard who might know something about the sealed level beneath Block D. And deep beneath all of it, hidden under decades of dust and silence, was a room that someone had gone to great lengths to erase from history. But the truth had a way of surfacing, especially when a man like Diego was listening. The last quiet before the collapse. The morning after the detectives confronted the warden, Carandiru felt wrong. Too still. Too synchronized. The guards moved with urgency, but avoided eye contact. Inmates huddled closer than usual. Roca walked the corridors with his jaw clenched tight, scanning every doorway, every shadow. He eventually found Diego seated alone in the common area, staring at the rusted ventilation grate near the floor, a place no one paid attention to until now. "You did something," Roca said. "I can feel it." Diego didn't turn his head. "I found something," he replied. "And other people realized I found it." Roca sat across from him. "What's down there?" Only the people who built it knew, Diego said. And maybe the people who sealed it. Roca frowned. And you? Diego paused, then looked up slowly. I think I'm starting to understand why they sealed it. The warden's confession. Outside, tensions were rising too. The warden finally broke. He agreed to escort Detectives Alves and Morera to the sealed sublevel, something he had sworn never to do. This place has history, he said quietly as they walked across the cracked asphalt yard. Not the kind that gets written down, the kind that gets buried. And Diego knows about it? Alves asked. The warden nodded. He knows just enough to be dangerous. They reached Block D. 2 guards stood watch as the warden opened a steel cabinet containing old keys and rusted security plates. Behind it was a reinforced panel welded over a second door. Morera ran her gloved hand over it. This was covered on purpose, she said. Because it wasn't supposed to be entered again, the warden answered. Alves stepped back. Open it. The warden hesitated, just long enough for both detectives to exchange a worried glance. Then gave the order. As the weld was cut open, the smell rose first, like stale earth, like time itself had rotted. And when the door creaked open, the beam of Morera's flashlight caught something deeply unsettling. A staircase descending into darkness. Concrete. Cold. Forgotten. Alves swallowed hard. What happened down here? The warden's voice barely rose above a whisper. It wasn't a storage area. It was a holding block. For the inmates they didn't want counted. Counted? Morera asked. Officially, the warden said, these men never existed. The riot, that wasn't an accident. Inside the prison, Diego felt movement before he heard it. Guards rushing to positions. Inmates backing away from the doors. Keys clattering. Metal locking. Boots running. A lockdown. Bino, furious since their last exchange, used the chaos as fuel. He shouted across the wing, riling up men who were always seconds away from rage. This is him. Bino screamed, pointing at Diego. The ghost. He brought police to our doorstep. They're going to come in guns blazing. And he's the reason. The room bristled. Accusations spread like fire. Roca shoved his way through the crowd. No one touches him, he barked. Bino snarled. Why are you protecting him? He's using you, Roca. Using all of us. And what are you doing? Diego finally said, rising to his feet with unnerving calm. Panicking like a man, afraid his secrets will come out? The wing froze. Roca stared at Diego. What secrets? Diego locked eyes with Bino. The sublevel, he said. Some people knew about it. Some people benefited. Some people didn't want it exposed. Bino's reaction, the twitch in his jaw, the shift of his stance, was all the confirmation anyone needed. Roca turned to Bino slowly. You knew. Bino stepped back. You don't understand. He didn't finish. A siren wailed through Carandiru, long, shrill, panicked. Something had been discovered. The room of the forgotten. Down in the sealed sublevel, the detectives moved deeper through the abandoned hall. Morera's flashlight passed over empty restraints, old rusted chains, and tally marks etched into the walls. Not 10, not 20, hundreds. These were isolation cells, she whispered. But there's no records of them ever being used. Alves moved toward a large metal door at the end of the hall. The lock was broken long ago. The hinges were warped. He pushed it slowly. The room inside was barren except for a single object. A wooden chair. Straps still attached. And beneath it, stains so old no one wanted to name them. Morera's voice trembled. They hid a black site prison inside a prison. The warden couldn't look. They said it was for the worst inmates, he whispered. But eventually, the definition of worst became whatever they needed it to be. Alves stepped back, breath shaking. And Diego knows this? How? The warden exhaled. Because one of the men kept down here was his brother. Full circle. Back inside the main block, Bino's anger suddenly shifted into fear, real, naked fear. You think I had something to do with what happened down there? He shouted. Diego's voice was low but steady. I think you know more than anyone else here. And I think you've been afraid of the day someone would open that door again. Roca's face hardened. Tell the truth. Now. But before Bino could speak, the loudspeakers crackled. A guard's voice boomed through the wing. All inmates, remain still. Detectives are on site. Everyone stay calm. The wing erupted with panic. Shouts. Movement. Doors slamming. Guards rushing in. Roca grabbed Diego's arm. What happens now? Diego looked toward the far end of the corridor, where the yard gates were opening and armed officers were entering. Now, Diego said softly, everything gets exposed. The legend begins. By sunset, Bino was removed from the wing under heavy guard. The warden was placed under investigation. The sealed sublevel was ordered reopened for forensic examination. Reporters gathered outside the gates. And Diego? He sat alone on the edge of his bunk, hands folded, eyes steady. Not triumphant, not relieved, just resolved. Roca approached him quietly. You planned all of this, he said. Diego didn't deny it. I just followed the truth, he said. And the truth led to a door no one wanted opened. Roca shook his head in disbelief. Who are you really? Diego's answer was barely more than a whisper. A man they tried to forget. Haunting ending. 3 months later, after the investigation blew open decades of hidden abuse and corruption, Carandiru officially shut down. Its darkest secrets finally brought to light. But one question lingered. How did Diego know so much before anyone else? When Morera reviewed the prison map again, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. In the corner, hidden inside a faint pencil sketch, was a name. Rafael Ramos, sublevel cell 14. The same last name as Diego. And beneath it, written in tiny, sharp handwriting. Find him. But no records existed of a Rafael Ramos. No release papers. No death certificate. Nothing. Almost as if he had never existed. Detective Morera exhaled, chilled to her core. They thought the sublevel held the worst criminals, she whispered. But maybe it held the wrong ones. And as she closed the file, one thought echoed in her mind. If this story shook you, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it.